This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with
$19.96 for us. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Myers. Welcome to episode 136, World's Finest 3. We're brought to you by the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman, and of course, Robin. We're also partnered with Batman on Film at BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can get a hold of us on all the social media outlets. We are primarily on Twitter at ELTD Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/everyonelovesthedrake. We're on Instagram, and you can email into the show at robineltdpodcast@yahoo.com. And if you listen on iTunes, leave us a review there on Apple Podcasts. That'll help spread the word of the show. Like I said, I'm Rob, and with me, returning and a new member to the show is our good friend Jay Oz. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Rob. Once again, very glad to be part of the crew, and thanks for having me back.
And my good friend, Terence O'Neil, is making his return finally to the show. Terence, how you doing, sir?
It's been a while. I feel like that Eminem song should be playing in the background. Guess who's back? Back again. Which I think he runs around in that video in like a quasi-Robin outfit as well.
An E.
Yeah, yeah, at the E. So I put a T instead. And yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for holding down the fort while I was gone.
Like we had said in the previous episode, it was kind of a 1 month break turned into a 4, and I blinked and went, I think you actually had sent a message, Terrence, like, I don't care what happens, but we need to record, when we were trying to figure out all the crazy times that we were going to record, snowstorms and crazy weather and COVID and everything like that. So, unfortunately, you and Ryan's not here again this week. He had something else come up. I think he's buying a used car lot or something right now.
Something like that.
Getting his own version of the Red Bird.
Yes, I'm going to be so jealous.
Lucky.
Terrence and Ryan weren't able to be on the last episode as we were discussing book 1 for World's Finest 3. And I had a little moment in the book as I was reading it that Jay wasn't here for our Contagion storyline. I don't know if giddy was the wrong word, but it was one of those like high five Chuck Dixon moments where like he put in the reference to the clench, and at one point the Redbird is in the area where the Babylon Towers used to be. So even just the 4-month absence, just going back to some of our more recent episodes, I'm like, oh, we were talking about the clench and reviewing this whole crazy thing that here's Dixon putting it in this, first book of like, oh man, I did pick this book to be slotted at the right time. And Dixon was like, I'm going to show Rob where this should go. Even I just went through publication when the book comes out, but chronologically, I was like, that's cool that it fit in so well. So since you weren't here on the last one, I even poked a little fun at myself. Is book one, is that poster cover, or that, I'm getting it all chewed up here. Is that cover poster worthy? Poking at myself. And what were some things about book one that you didn't get a chance to say on the last episode that you want to kind of speak on?
Definitely poster worthy, but I am such a Tom Grummett fanboy that like anything he's ever done is poster worthy in my opinion. I overlook the fact that every single face looks exactly the same from some weird cloning experiment. I remember getting these books really fondly back when they came out. I must have been like, what, they came out 96 is when it came
96,
out?
96, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just finishing up college. I turned 20 that year. So, no, I'm sorry. I turned 21 that year. So I was 20, so I'm old enough to like kind of remember the stuff. So getting more Grummett artwork when you kind of thought those days of, Tim Drake and him had passed was just, total fanboy. I was a big Superboy fan at the time. I was reading Superboy, and I don't know if it was out yet. He had two books. He had Superboy and Superboy and the Ravers, which I had no idea what a raver was. I thought it was like some alien reaver. Wow. And then I had it's like people who go to parties and go to raves. I think that book was out already, but I'm not quite sure. I was kind of into both characters at the time. Seeing the Redbird again, I totally geeked out. But I always see the Redbird and I was like, didn't that crash? Didn't that like get destroyed? And then I have to remind myself, oh yeah, Bruce Wayne's a billionaire. I'm sure he had more than one Redbird for Tim. The ring, seeing that Kryptonite ring, which had been a theme in the Batman stories from even before, like the whole Nightfall and everything like that, when Superman and Action Comics was like 75 cents for a while. Those days, like that was really cool. But there had been this whole like running thing in the Superboy books about like, could Kryptonite affect him or not? And there was still like, we didn't quite know like where he came from. And, there was like stuff with Camdus and who his DNA really was. So there was this kind of error, like in between the first book and the second book of like, is this ring even going to do anything? Is this ring, will it have an effect? Is he a clone of Superman? Is it what's going on? And then you get the payoff in the second book. So there was really like this wasn't like just a one-off, like, oh yeah, here's a little side adventure, now back to our regular story. Like with the Superboy part, it actually does, have a big impact in his future kind of going forward. Yeah, I love kind of every page of the Tom Grummett art. And even though this was like a prestige format and there's extra pages, the panels are really big and it reads really fast. And it was a lot of fun. The only thing I didn't like is, this goes back when we did like our Underworld Unleashed kind of art things where they tried to like... I
really wanted you on that last episode. Yeah. I can imagine what Terence is going to say.
Well, when they just tried to like image comic or whatever was hip, all these, classic villains, and Metallo turned into the T-1000 from Terminator 2. Like, if they don't even try to, like, hide it like that, it's, like, just, like, a direct steal from it. And then, all right, like, he's like, super powerful and really badass in the first issue, and then, like, he does some stuff in the second issue where I'm just like, what the heck? What? Like they should have, I don't know, made him, like I could see a D-level villain doing it, but, I don't know, when we get to the whole scuba outfit and like that kind of stuff, where I'm going with it. But anyway, that's my long, short recap of the first issue. I'm sorry I couldn't make it.
That's all right. You're here now, and that's all that matters, to make that sound really cheesy. Well, if we don't make you wait a little bit longer, we're going to take a quick little promo break, and on the other side, we'll hear the synopsis of Book 2 of World's Finest 3, and then our discussion of Book 2 for World's Finest 3. We'll be right back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Sawate. My name is Stella, and I am the host of Batgirl to Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Batgirl to Oracle is a podcast dedicated to Barbara Gordon, the first woman to hold the mantle of Batgirl for an extended period of time, roughly 1967 to 1988. The goal of Batgirl to Oracle is to examine the character's history from her first appearance as Batgirl and continuing through her tenure as Oracle. Each episode looks at a vintage issue of Detective Comics or Batman, as well as other books like Justice League and Freedom Fighters, and modern issues of Batgirl and Birds of Prey. I also keep track of news involving Batgirl and other members of the Bat family, and I have a revolving series of segments like Babs in the Tube, which highlights appearances of Babs in TV and film, Shipper Spotlight, which looks at a variety of comic and pop culture couples, gives their history, and determines whether they are hot or not, Reading with Stella, which could be described as an audio drama, or just me reading a book that relates to Babs or doesn't, and of course, the mainstay literature recommendation. I have been blessed to interview writers Scott Beatty and Chuck Dixon on their Batgirl Year 1 work, Brian Q. Miller on his Batgirl run, Dwayne Swarzynski and Christy Marks on their separate Birds of Prey work, and the creators and actors of the Batgirl Spoiled, the web series. I hope to interview more creators and actors in the future. My goal, most importantly, is to make a fun, entertaining, and thoughtful show that people enjoy and from which they learn. Find the show online at thebatmanuniverse.net and iTunes, and follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at Batgirl to Oracle. Thank you, and fly on, Babs lovers.
Recognize Robin B20.
All right, and now the synopsis and information for Superboy Robin World's Finest 3. Book 2 comes to us from Mike'sAmazingWorld.com. We have a cover date of 1997 with an on-sale date of November 27th, 1996, with a cover price of $4.95 for this being a prestige format book. The editor is Frank Pitteries. The writers are Carl Kessel and Chuck Dixon, penciler Tom Grummett, the inker is Scott Hanna, and the letterer is Ken Lopez, and the colorist is Scott Burnham. And the cover credits go to Tom Grummett and Scott Hanna. And I wrote the synopsis for the last one, and for the expedience of time, a DC Fandom a Wikia page does have a really decent synopsis for this one. And so I'm just going to go ahead and take the easier route at this time, so I hope you don't mind. Here we go. Synopsis for World's Finest 3, Book. What Happened in Hawaii. The End. There's a couple other shows for you to check out, and you can hear my synopsis there, which I wrote the last one, and for time, I'm just going to use from DC Wikia's page, which I think I already said in the synopsis. But here we are for book 2, so like we like to do is look at the cover for World's Finest 3, and this is a wraparound cover, which I don't know if it's really a wraparound cover. It's more, there's an image on both sides. So we've got a cool image of Superboy and Robin being tied up in the vines, which Jay and I said last time, you could, even though the cover for the first book really wasn't any part of the story, but it's a good, almost, we joked it's a literal launching off point, like they're launching into their adventure. Yeah, you like what I did there. I'll be here all night, folks.
I do.
This one, this really doesn't, I shouldn't say really, this doesn't happen in the issue, but it's a very well drawn, executed piece that our two heroes are tied up in the vines. The back of the cover kind of goes to what Terrence was saying just a little bit ago. This is like, hey, in case you didn't know, this is Terminator 3 right here for the T-1000. It's, as much as I love Grummet, I don't really care for this back image. And with it being bagged and boarded, some of those books that are prestige where they've got artwork on both sides, you're like, oh, I really can't see the back of the issue. I don't miss it as much. But and that's not a knock to it, but it's just, I think he probably had to do something there. This is what he chose. It would have been kind of cool to see this be a literal wraparound. But what do you guys think of the cover for Book 2 of World's Finest 3? Let's start with Jay on this one.
For the actual cover, it is more indicative of what happens in the issue than issue 1. That said, the issue 1 cover was just a cooler cover. Sometimes that's all you need. This one, it's interesting enough, and it's really dynamic, and I like how almost Robin and Superboy are kind of have a role reversal here, where Superboy can fly, but he's the one that's grounded, and Robin can't fly, but he's the one that's being pulled in the air by the vines. It's attention grabbing and everything. If I had to choose between the two, I would definitely choose a poster of issue 1 over this. Funny enough, for the back, even though I don't necessarily love that image, it is much more of like this static kind of poster worthy image that you would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I like just even though it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, I like Metallo's huge head in the background and then Poison Ivy trying to hide. I mean, it does look more like something that, you just see prints made of and sold at like Tom Grummet's table at a comic convention.
I agree. Of the two, I would think the back is actually going to be the print at his table. The cover of this probably wouldn't be, but the cover 1 would be at his table as a print. But
even still, I like the image, the front image of issue 2 more than I like the back image of issue 2. It's still better. I mean, but it's got our boys on it. It's got Superboy and Robin, so of course I'm going to like it more. But they have similar faces, very similar faces. But it's one of those things like, well, everything else looks fantastic, and at least it's not a bad face. It's not it's not like he can draw everything else except for faces. The fact that his faces look good, they just look similar, I'm willing to overlook because everything else is just so stellar.
It's not like he has Liefeld feet for a face.
Exactly.
Terrence, what about you at the cover?
Oh, okay. So
I'm glad you're back.
Here's the deal. If you just showed me this like artwork, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. But considering that Poison Ivy and Metallo aren't on the cover, I'm kind of like, I guess they're on the back, but like, I think you could have just done so much more with the villains instead of just foliage attacking our heroes and they're battling a leaf. And considering what happens in the issue and that Robin and Superboy go blow to blow, and when you open the book, there's like a title page, which is art that's in the book, but it's Tim Drake punching Superboy, and Superboy's like in the foreground, and there's the pain on his face. It's like, I'd rather that have been the cover. Like, give me Robin hitting Superboy or the fight or something. So my feeling is, as a picture of art, I like it, but I feel like they dropped the ball and they could have just done so much more, either with the villains or with the conflict, the battle between Superboy and Robin. But it's comic business. Maybe they didn't have a lot of time on the cover or whatnot, or they had their reasons. I don't know.
I do like the fact that if they had them battling on the cover, that would have been much more interesting and attention grabbing. But I like the fact that rather than say, oh, this is Robin versus Superboy, this cover image at least tries to sell more that it's a team up between the two rather than a conflict between the two. Mm-hmm. Even if they are kind of at odds through most of the issue, I do kind of appreciate that they didn't go that route for that reason.
And I wonder what the lead time was between Grummet doing the cover, if like the covers originated first before getting into the interiors,
right?
Where they were just like, hey, have Robin and Superboy going into battle, and then, there's going to be a story with Poison Ivy in it, so do something with the boys fighting Poison Ivy, and this is what it is. So I think, to your point, Terrence, seeing that insert at the very beginning where all the text goes, like you said, Jay, that would be a good grab. If you bought issue 1, you get issue 2, and you see Robin striking Superboy, you could go, well, they were jumping off a building together, ready to fight the last time. What did Superboy do? That type of thing. So let's just get into the body of this. From where we left off last time, Superboy gets the kiss from Poison Ivy, and of course, Superboy is going to follow because, his Superboy libido is working in overtime, as it typically does with the character. And they fly off to Hawaii, which, what could possibly go wrong with all this great green foliage and taking Poison Ivy there? So that is where our hero is being led to with Poison Ivy. I like how the beginning of this starts with Poison Ivy, that he must be strong enough to be able to ward off some of the spell. So probably like the ambulance drivers in the previous episode, she probably kissed them once and they were under control the whole entire time. She's got to kiss Superboy a couple different times throughout the issue to keep him. And I didn't realize that there was like a range attached. Like if he flies too far out of the area, she can't control him anymore. I thought it was like once you're under the spell, you're always under the spell, unless that's just built in there for these type of purposes.
I think it would be like pheromones. So the closer he is, to her, the stronger it's going to be and harder to ward off. But if he gets further away, the pheromones are going to be dissipated and diluted and everything. So he'd be able to collect himself a little bit more.
But I think this is cool, kind of setting up where the first book was really us kind of getting familiar with the two heroes. If you only read Superboy or only read Robin, and the two of them getting familiar with each other, where it's more Metallo based issue, where I think, Jay, you and I spoke the last time that this, I think what works well, maybe we're spoiling the end of it a little bit, what works better for this story, it's not like both villains decide, aha, we need to team up together to take these two down. They're independently working of their own, even though they're kind of sort of after the same MacGuffin type of a thing. It all seems to kind of work together, but I think Poison Ivy is definitely the focal point of this issue, and Metallo was the last one. So what did you guys think of Poison Ivy being primarily the lead villain throughout this book? Let's start with Terrence on this one.
I thought it was really a great villain, especially with Superboy, because if the way Superboy was being written, especially in his own book, was that he was a real horn dog. Like, like he cared more about the girls. I mean, I think the first book started off, he was like judging a kissing contest or something, which, that's not going to fly in today's PC world,
Right.
It's very much like an Archie comic kind of vibe. In fact, I really love, I think it's on page 3 or so, the way Grummet, the bottom of page 3, Grummet draws Superboy's face, and it has that kind of look of like, like he's under, he's I got you under my spell kind of thing. So for that matter, it was good. I've said this on previous podcasts. Poison Ivy is without a doubt the least consistent Batman villain in terms of what are her powers, what can she do, what does she look like, who she is. Sometimes she can control every plant in the world. I mean, in Tom King's run, I think she controlled like the entire world somehow or something. I don't know. And then other times, she can just make a vine that Batman can snap. So I always just kind of like take Poison Ivy with a grain of salt. I mean, she's one of the least grounded in reality villains Batman has, and so I'm always like, So for this kind of farcical parts of the story, I think she works really good.
Yeah, I made mention in the previous episode, I think, how I like Poison Ivy more when she's just like a botanist and, wants to allow plants to thrive and everything. Like, one of those characters that you might see where she's coming from, but her ends do not justify her actual means at all. I don't like, being able to grow vines, having green hued skin and everything like that. And now I'm pretty sure she's like a villainous female Swamp Thing, effectively, which I think is kind of boring. I think it's much more interesting when she's just a normal person who has, some villainous goals and everything. I like her portrayal here a lot more. I do kind of appreciate the fact that whereas the first issue, like you said, focused more on Metallo and she was kind of a secondary figure, kind of to parallel that issue started with Metallo. This issue starts with Poison Ivy to kind of say that she's more of the driving factor for this issue. So that was kind of a cool storytelling parallels there, because they even used the same panel structure too.
Yeah.
There might have been 9 panels in the first issue. I can't remember. Again, funny enough, the first issue opened with Metallo in nature. This opens with Poison Ivy in like a dilapidated suburb almost. So the issues start off with one character in the other character's normal environment, which is kind of interesting. Just kind of came to me.
Well, that was a good catch. That was deep. I like. Yeah.
Well, then the other one
impressed.
is it starts with an animal. It starts with a frog in a swamp. This starts with rats, and then ends up in a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, good call there. Like Terence said, and I think we mentioned it too, that the bad guys in this story don't ever team up. They're not working together at any point, which is kind of refreshing and makes it a lot more interesting, because it's less Robin and Superboy versus Poison Ivy and Metallo. It's Robin and Superboy versus Poison Ivy versus Metallo versus Robin and Superboy. So, like, neither of the villains are working together to similar ends. Like, everybody is in conflict with each other here. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and they're exact opposites, because Metallo has, like, no organic material. Or does he still have a brain? Does he still have... Where he's almost no organic material.
Yeah.
And you've got Poison Ivy, who wants to rid the world of anything that's, man-made and return it all to just organic material. So that's pretty genius of Chuck Dixon. And who else wrote this? Or was it
Carl Kessel?
Carl Kessel, yeah. That pretty deep of these guys.
Well, and something I noticed from reading this one again today and kind of leafing back through book 1, I commended both of Dixon and Kessel writing them together, but the more I thought about it, book 1 almost seems to lean more towards Chuck Dixon's writing, because that's where, if you had to pick one of the two heroes that was kind of a lead, it was probably Tim in that book. This one feels, maybe it's just because we're in Hawaii, we're in surroundings for Superboy, this one feels like Kessel might have had more of the story breakdowns and the outlines for it. And I wasn't really reading Superboy at that time, but I could definitely feel a little bit of a shift in the narrative for Superboy when he was speaking more so than I could in the last one. Did you guys pick up on that at all? Or
Rob, are you saying that this is more of a Kessel run?
You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
Sorry. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I did not.
But I appreciate the joke nonetheless.
Yes.
So the part I was getting to, which I thought was kind of funny and odd, you talk about like Poison Ivy, Terrence, being kind of the most inconsistent Batman character, that the joke that Alfred had to ride coach on this plane and they couldn't get the Wayne Court plane. I was like, why didn't you just take the Bat plane and have Alfred fly? I'm thinking like there were other issues that we've read in the last 8 or so years where Alfred has flown a plane for Batman and Robin and Nightwing or whatever the case is. So I think it's funny that they may have lost Tim's luggage, and his luggage being his costume. And, look, there's the T-1000 that looks like a suitcase and all that stuff. So a little bit of, kind of comedy put in there for comedy's sake. But I didn't want to belabor on that too much. But
I liked it, too, because he kind of gave an explanation of, how am I going to get a Wayne Corp jet with Bruce out of town and Lucius and all that? So there's a little bit of that real world of, he's still, a 15, 16-year-old kid. He can't just do everything Batman can do. So
that's very true.
You know, I kind of like that. But yeah, and the coach thing is funny.
Yeah, I think it was also more with Robin and Alfred, maybe even trying to say that they could take care of it themselves, you know, without having to worry about using all of the resources Batman has. More of a, okay, if someone takes the bat plane, Bruce is probably going to get a notice, like an alarm or something going off. We'll try to figure out, you know, what's going on. We'll probably intervene, and almost like they didn't want it, not because they didn't want him to find out, but because they didn't want him to have to interject in here, because, you know, Robin felt like he could, you know, handle this himself. Also trying to clean up his own mess that he made too, with, you know, bringing Superboy into it. So
yeah,
I wonder if some of that was at play there too.
But I don't want to let page 8 go by, or leading 7 into going 8 with Metallo trying to find some type of disguise to wear. Like, I actually laughed out loud, and I was like, okay, is this Dixon, or this has to be Kessel writing this? Because I thought this was really funny that Metallo decides, I just can't walk around in my T-1000 costume. I got to find, he was talked about finding a jacket, and that the most inconspicuous thing that he can find is full scuba gear. And I was like, that is really kind of funny. This big, bulking, you know, robot that was like a 10-foot tank could get in a normal size body and get into a scuba diving suit, and to be inconspicuous then breaks the Honolulu Post newspaper display stand. I thought that was really kind of funny. So you mentioned that, Terrence. What do you think about this little comedic sequence that they put in here for Metallo?
Yeah, you know, I thought it was a little inconsistent with book 1, where he's this like really terrifying T-1000 that can turn into a tank and produce all these guns, and he's got to sneak in a luggage compartment to get to Hawaii, and then he's got to put on a scuba gear, like, and it just kind of you would think a guy walking with the scuba gear with a harpoon on his back and stuff would have caused a little more
TSA, come here, sir.
Yeah, than just a robot walking around or something. You know, like I mean, I guess it was played off for laughs, but you would think he could have done it a little more stealthily. But you know, it's kind of I don't know. I think it just sets the tone. I think it goes well with Grummet's art. You know, if it was a little bit more like a realistic artist, or more of like the Image kind of, it would look just ridiculous. But Grummet's art is more like in line with like a Batman the Animated Series kind of thing, and it's just for fun. I mean, it just kind of tells you, hey, don't take it too seriously. You know, it's just have some fun with it.
Yeah, Jay.
Oh, it's dumb, and I thought it was hilarious. But that's it. I can't add anything to it. I mean, it's silly. It probably makes no sense if you think about it. In fact, if you don't even think about it, it doesn't make any sense. But it's played for laughs. Who cares?
I just remember thinking, like, if you could turn into a tank, can't you turn into a plane and just fly somewhere inconspicuous? But the sequence with the helicopter, I thought, was kind of interesting and odd, that it's the government knows that, hey, there's a bunch of stuff going on in Hawaii. His reporter girlfriend is reporting that there's a lot of destruction happening because they don't know it's poison ivy at this point, but there's a lot of vines and tentacles. So they're sending out helicopters and, you know, military to help try and ward the stuff off. So this is where I was talking about Superboy being like out of range of the pheromones, where he's going to destroy the helicopter and then quickly has that turn of like, well, hey, what are you guys doing? Why are you here? And I thought that sequence was written very well. Superboy going into, I'm going to destroy the helicopter, and these guys are falling. Well, why are you guys here? You know, I'm not a doctor. So I thought that sequence was kind of cool. And then Alfred and Robin getting out of their hotel and flying and seeing the destruction so far. So you guys kind of just talk on that section for a bit. Let's start with Terrence.
Yeah, there's nothing like overly great, I think, in this section, and there's nothing terrible. I think it just kind of moves the plot along. I do have a really fond nostalgia and love the scenes where it's Tim and Alfred sort of like unpacking in the hotel together, and just their like relationship and the back and forth, and how Alfred is like just even on it's not really a vacation, but it's still a vacation kind of like they're in Hawaii. But he's unpacking and folding things like the butler, and Tim's like, I don't know, just sitting there in like his like Hawaii kind of outfit. I don't know. I just kind of love it.
Yeah, I like it. I like that scene between Alfred and Robin. That's definitely maybe even a high point of the issue, if not the series. Terrence said the actual action scene with Superboy and Ivy, it kind of dragged a little bit just because I wasn't remarkably invested in what was going on. I mean, other than Ivy wanting to take over, the entire island and make, the plants grow and everything, her plan, at least at this point, isn't remarkably clear beyond that. So there really didn't feel like there was a lot of stakes other than this is something that needs to be stopped. Like, I know it's not good, but I also don't feel like there's any like investment from the writers or the characters, at least at this point. It does kind of drag a little bit. I do like the detail, though, of even under Ivy's control, Superboy is still impulsive and hot-headed, which helps him to break free of her spell because he's there standing with her, and she gets upset about the helicopter being there, saying they're not supposed to be here. So he flies off of his own volition, and she yells after him, no, you need to stay close to me. And he's like, but what? I thought, what's going on? Which leads to him breaking free of her control. So I thought that was kind of clever that he's still himself even while he's under her control.
Yeah. And Terrence, you had mentioned that even though this is a prestige format book, the book moves pretty quick. It's not a real dense read. I don't mean any disrespect by that at all. But from like page, what was I counting? Like from page 17 to 26, this moves at a pretty good clip from Robin checking out the vines, Metallo finding other artillery, which I want to get back to that in a second. And maybe it's because more than half of him was destroyed previously, so he needed more of a tank. But anyway, that Metallo is tracking the Kryptonite signature that he overheard Superboy, or that Robin was going to be able to get somehow. So he's tracking Robin, and Robin is arriving at the same point where Metallo is. So that whole chase sequence, I think, moves pretty quick, even with the dialogue that's there. Superboy arriving and ending up holding him upside down at one point. I thought this whole section moves pretty quick, and we say it a lot of times on the show. There's a lot of fluidity through these pages. So I thought it was a very quick read. I remember getting to this point and going, wow, I'm a better part almost halfway through this book, and we're right almost up to the quote-unquote the confrontation between Superboy and Robin. So what did you guys think of Dixon and Kessel writing this section of the book?
Yeah, I thought it was all right. I kind of like the pace the book moves in. I kind of prefer my comic books to move at a faster pace than not get bogged down in too much needless like exposition and dialogue, even though that's what I do here on the podcast. Is just lots of needless exposition and dialogue. I did like it for the fact that it established that if Superboy went too far from Poison Ivy, it's going to cause him to lose, or cause her to lose her spell over him, because that's a hard thing to like convey because she's not going to tell him. And then if it was just the thought bubble of like, oh, Superboy, I hope he doesn't go too far because then doesn't work anymore. Like that would have just been too easy and lame. So this was a good way to kind of reveal it to us and kind of see it in action.
Jay?
Yeah, I like this sequence quite a bit. A lot of it might be because just as a fan of Tim Drake, I mean, as much as I like Superboy, I mean, Tim Drake is, one of my favorite characters, as opposed to just really liking and appreciating the characters. So having this section be devoted to him definitely makes me more invested in it. But there's also just that it seems to be a lot more exciting. Like, okay, what is Metallo up to? Oh my gosh, he turned himself into a tank, and all this stuff. So it is, even though it has about the same, amount of dialogue per page as the preceding section with Superboy and Poison Ivy, it does seem to flow better. I mean, again, a lot of it may just be because it's the character that I enjoy more. It might be because it's just so much more ridiculous and entertaining and crazy seeing a metal robot monster turn into a metal robot monster tank, and then a metal robot monster hovercraft. And just like that escalation there. And then, chase scenes are always fun. And Grummet really, really knows how to draw action and movement. Like, I love the shot of Robin kind of lunging out of the frame at the bottom of page 21. And then, that leads to him getting on his motorbike there. And even though it's a short chase, it's really exciting because you've got, again, the giant metal robot tank monster chasing after him, and Robin kind of outsmarting him by using a batarang to flip into a tree while he lets the motorbike get away. And then, there's definite fluid on that scene because Metallo falls into the water. And it's just a really, really well-paced, really exciting part of the story that definitely pushed it forward, and at least this part of the issue go by at a ridiculously fast pace.
And we talked about it the last episode. What possibly, Jay, what could be the reason why Robin cannot get the ring out of his utility belt? What force on earth that somebody has to tell Robin why he couldn't get into his utility belt? Would you like to tell everybody that maybe hasn't listened to the Young Justice podcast what that thing is that this character loves to tell everybody?
Superboy's #tactile telekinesis.
I think that is the funniest thing about Superboy. That, I have this power, and it is this.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool thing that, you kind of read between the lines like, that's the reason why you couldn't get into it. So like it was at this point, I was like, well, why would Superboy be doing that? And we get the dun dun dun, Poison Ivy is there, and you have that wonderful expression on 28 with Robin's eyes wide open. And I noticed through the latter part of the issue, there was at some point, I think back on page 7 or 8, where Robin's in costume and he's telling Alfred that he can see because of his night vision. Like, he still has his night vision on. So I don't know if that's just a coloring error there. But anyway, his eyes are really wide. You get this really cool, evil looking shot of Poison Ivy. And then Superboy clocks Robin. Talk about him being a hothead. I would have thought, like, he probably broke Robin's neck right there and punched a hole through his stomach, and then, gets to pick up a tree and wants to smash him. And then before we get to 30, which is the poster shot, or maybe the the cover of possible issue. But what did you guys think about this? Did you see the Poison Ivy reveal coming, or did you think Superboy was being, was fine at this point? Jay?
I mean, I definitely, felt like there was something going on there. It kind of had to be just to keep her involved. One thing I did want to mention that may be the best, the best visual storytelling in the issue is actually on page 27. It's after Superboy pretty much tries to talk Robin out of using the Kryptonite ring. And Tim's just looking at the case in his hand, and his brow is, really furrowed. And then there's just a subtle change. There's slightly fewer lines on his brow. His eyes seem a little more relaxed, and he shifts the little container with the ring in it in the next panel. Agreeing with Superboy, like, okay, I'm not going to do this. Let's talk. I'll hear you out. Let's do what we need to do. Just really great, really subtle acting, quote unquote, there with from Grummet's penciling, just to really convey, Tim thinking it through and then ultimately deciding, even if he has reservations, okay, I'll at least go along with this for the time being. But the rest of the sequence, I didn't think about it, but yeah. Other than Robin having an armored tunic, that punch from Superboy, unless he pulled his punch, probably should have straight up killed him. But, whatever. We wouldn't have a book after that.
Right. And story done. World over. Terrence.
Yeah, I took it that Superboy was resisting Poison Ivy to some degree, like you had mentioned earlier, Rob. So that's why he pulled his punches and didn't, go all out or use his tactile telekinesis to re-scramble his internal
hashtag.
Yeah. Hashtag. Yeah, it took me forever as a kid to learn what that was. I didn't know what either one of those words meant, and I looked it up, I believe, a few times in the dictionary, because that's not a thing in the dictionary. I still didn't know what it means, like tactile. And then finally, I think it was in a letter column or something, somebody explained. I was like, oh, I still don't get it.
For the longest time, I thought it was tactical telekinesis.
Yeah.
Dude, I was the same way. I was like, oh, he's got to make a game plan deciding at what point he wants to use his telekinesis. Then I realized tactile was touch. I was like, oh, well, I sound like an idiot.
That makes much more sense.
Like The Simpsons. What's a gime? Oh, a gime. Rereading this, I remember clearly Robin using the ring on Superboy. So I kind of rereading it knew like, well, this isn't over yet. But I did think the Poison Ivy reveal was kind of done really well, especially the artwork on it where her face is in shadows and she's got those like Batman white Norm Brayfogle eyes.
Yeah.
I did notice the shading too on Robin's eyes was green a lot, and I didn't know if that was like a coloring error or he just like leaves his night vision goggles on. Or
I mean, it's nighttime now, so it would make sense for him to have those on.
Yeah,
especially if he's in like a jungle where it's darker.
Mm-hmm.
That would just help him to see better, I think.
And I love the scene where like Superboy is super powerful, has hashtag tactile or tactical telekinesis.
Yeah, there we go.
He could just walk over and just like crush Tim's head. He could just punch him in the face. But he decides to rip out a tree and try to smash him with the tree in front of Poison Ivy, who's like all about like don't harm the planet, don't harm nature. Like, so maybe that's
gotta impress the ladies there.
Yeah. Like, Poison Ivy would look down on you ripping up a tree just to kill someone. You just go over there and kill him. But I do love that punch, and I love that paint on Superboy's face. The scene where like Robin's kind of standing over him, kind of Muhammad Ali kind of esque with it, and then sorry pal, I'm not falling for your act again. Like that was pretty good. But then how he loses the ring is kind of like, oh come on.
Yeah, that's where, if anything really felt like a MacGuffin-y after a while, it became the chase of the ring that now, like, Metallo's just looking to, like, I just want the ring so I can have power, so I can destroy Superman, and, Poison Ivy's thinking, well, I may not even need this kid. If I have the ring, I can go find Superman and control him and all that stuff. So you get the chase of the ring, and then what really kind of made this feel like Batman the Animated Series for me is the moment when Robin hops on Metallo and starts, prying him open to get into the circuit board, where, Jay and I said in the last episode that if we had a dartboard of all the DC villains, we have Batman villains on one side and Superman villains on the other side. Pick two. Poison Ivy and Metallo would be the two villains I would say, I don't want to throw a dart at these two because I don't know what kind of story we're going to get. This was that moment where I was like, not that it's cringeworthy, but the Metallo Robin scene, I was like, I probably could have done without that. I was kind of into it more with Superboy and Poison Ivy, that she has the ring and she's 36, where she's holding her hand out with the ring like inches from his face, telling like, say my name. And
what's my name? Say my name, bitch!
Kiss my ring, of like, that's probably instantaneous death if Superboy kisses that ring, where you go, we don't have much respect for Poison Ivy as a villain, but this is where like her evil tendencies came out, where I was like, yeah, she's not a real good character at this moment. You might want to bump her up into the list of Batman villains that you don't want to mess with. I thought that seemed really kind of showed her real evil nature. So what did you guys think of the Superboy Poison Ivy scene and the Robin Metallo section too, for that matter?
I think it kind of shows Poison Ivy as just, again, inconsistent. Like, what's her deal? Does she want power? Does she want these men to worship her? Does she want Superboy to worship her? Or does she care about the environment, and is her goal to, bring the Earth back to a natural state and get rid of all the man-made creations? And it goes back and forth, and it gets muddled, and in one issue she's all about having men worship her. The next issue, she's just an eco-terrorist. So, it wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but it just kind of plays to the inconsistency that is Poison Ivy. And I guess for Superboy, he needs that hero moment, because like most of the issue, he's basically her lapdog. So he needs that hero moment to like resist and stand up on his own and, reject it. So, I guess it serves a purpose in his story arc. The Metallo Robin thing is kind of weird, because it's like you can create yourself into this huge like monster thing. You couldn't have made yourself into a submarine to get to Hawaii. Like, well, come on. And then really, like, you're controlling what you can create yourself into. So why would you control and create an access panel for Robin to get into you? Like, it's just kind of, I don't know. I'm sure we could like come up with reasons why that had to be there and this or that, but it just kind of, it kind of is weird.
Yeah, I mean, one of the strengths that I said of the story was that Poison Ivy and Metallo's plans don't really align. This is a sequence where that can also be seen as a weakness, because at this point it's like, okay, well, what's the Poison Ivy stuff here is definitely stronger. Definitely. At this point it's gotten to where, okay, we just need to get Metallo off the table, so let's think of a contrivance. I'm not saying that he's an idiot, but it may be a case of, well, he still needs mechanical components and wiring to be able to function and everything, so he has to have that stuff there. That there's an easy access panel could just be from, like a plane or the boat or whatever he used to transform into this big hovercraft thing, and he just didn't think about needing to reconfigure that to where it's not there. I mean, it could be anything. It is easy and contrived. It's clever on Tim's part how he takes him down, but even still, I mean, if you start poking holes in it and thinking about it, it doesn't really hold together very well. I do like now there is an immediate tangible threat against, one of the boys, because, Superboy now is less under Poison Ivy's control, just with her, pheromones and everything. And now he would almost be enslaved because he's so weak, he can't fight back. And I liked the line where Metallo was telling Ivy to hand over the ring, and, she says, you killed all these innocent, creatures, and you dare make demands of me. I thought that was kind of cool from her. Like I said, it's one of the story's strengths and also a weakness, too, in this entire sequence that, Ivy and Metallo didn't just all of a sudden decide to team up, but once we get to a point where both characters are there and we have all four of our main players in one area, it's almost like they're thinking, well, what do we do now? Where do we go from here?
And I think the saving grace of this is neither Robin nor Superboy save each other. They both, I mean, it's not like, oh, Robin saves both of them. At one point, it's Superboy saving Robin, then it's Robin saving Superboy, and they mention that on the rooftop, that it's not a good thing Robin was there to save Superboy, that with the last ounce of Superboy's strength from putting the ring into the case, that he was able to catch Robin to slow his descent. I like how they put in, terminal velocity in there, that they are falling fast enough, but then Robin's got to do some quick thinking on his point to, okay, great, you slowed our descent, but we're still going down, and the blades of this crazy T-1000 Metallo are just below, so we're both going to be torn to shreds. So I like how that all gets resolved, and they're both kind of sitting on the rock together. I thought that was a cool scene. Then we end up moving to the press conference, and in typical Batman fashion, I love when Dixon has Robin do things naturally the way Batman would. If this was happening in Metropolis, it'd be Superman that was standing there and Batman would be up on the roof watching it. Let Superboy take all of the credit, all of the glory, and that's exactly what happens. Robin's up on the roof. They have their exchange back and forth with one another. Tim plays with the, hey, look at that, it's, Metallo, to get the ring back from Superboy, which I thought was kind of cool. And then in typical Batman fashion, boom, Robin's gone and we're back in the Batcave before the final panel. So the end of this book, even that section that we were talking about, where it was kind of like, I think we're kind of falling a little bit, I really think Kessel and Dixon both land the ending scenes with Superboy and Robin that make you, by the end of this, going, I want more of these two, and where more of their interaction is going to happen, and why these two characters were very popular in the 90s. So I loved this sequence. So what did you guys think about the conclusion of Robin and Superboy's mission, and before we get to the stinger at the end? Let's start with Jay.
Like you said, the fact that they save each other, it's not just one of them is the one who came out on top as the big hero. Superboy trying as much as he could to fly Robin to safety, and then Robin having to swing the both of them with a really, really cool shot on page 42.
Oh, it's a beautiful shot.
I love that. And then that page also has one of the goofiest panels in the entire series, where Metallo's head is stuck in the head of a torpedo. which I just think is hilarious.
Yeah.
With his, I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids moment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wrapped up neatly. I'm not totally into the, Batman and Robin and them are urban legend characters, which I think they might have hit on in here. I don't remember, or maybe it was in the first issue.
I think yeah, where it was more like Superboy is aware that there is Batman, that he might find the Bat of Gotham, but the idea that Robin even being there didn't cross his radar.
So, I mean, I'm not always a big fan of that, but I do like that, rather than trying to draw attention to the fact that Robin and, by extension, Tim Drake and Alfred Pennyworth were in Hawaii.
Right.
Superboy just takes the lead, takes all the credit. Tim plays into his kind of impulsiveness and hot-headedness and tricks him into giving the Kryptonite ring back. And it's just great that even when they were conflicting with each other in the story, they were never antagonists to each other. And even here in these final pages, where they, become, friendly and appreciated working with each other, I really, really enjoyed that.
Terrence.
Yeah, as I was kind of listening to you guys talk, I kind of thought, Metallo didn't even need to be in this issue at all. They could have accomplished his scene with either some Poison Ivy henchman or just her creating some vines or plant monster or something like that to distract Robin and give Robin something to do or something. There's nothing really like, oh, this had to be Metallo because of this or this. But also, I think you got to look at it, 1996, when this came out, Superboy had 2 titles going. I think both of them written by Carl Kessel. I'm looking up Superboy and the Ravers was out from 96 to 98, and it says it was written by Carl Kessel and Steve Mattson. Tim is in his ongoing Robin. He's also in pretty much in every issue of Detective Comics that Chuck Dixon's writing, and in a whole bunch of other Batman stuff coming out. So there was a lot of Robin and Superboy out there, and this was just a 2-issue series. It wasn't a start of a series. It wasn't a world building, wasn't establishing characters. They couldn't, build on stuff. So what do you do in a 2-issue series? Well, you tell a fun action story, and this is what it was, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it, and it's kind of textbook, no real twists and turns about how it starts and ends and everything like that. But you know what? It's still fun.
I think I said at the beginning, I like how Batman and Superman don't have to be in the book. They don't come in to save the day, that Robin and Superboy are falling to their death, and it's the bat plane that flies in, and Superman that scoops up the villains, and it wraps up in a nice little bow, and the boys get a good talking to. I think this even happened in the Young Justice book that you and I were doing. I forget what that very first book was, where they were kind of getting a what for from the Justice League, and the 3 heroes were like, all right, we'll still do this. We still got it. I like that doesn't happen here, but it's a typical Batman thing to happen. Like Alfred and Robin are like, all right, we got the ring back. Bruce Bruce didn't know what's going on, and who comes down the stairs? It's Batman. And I love the last line of the book where, it's like, oh, Batman says, oh, I've been doing a lot of Bruce Wayne stuff. I'm eager to get back out there. And you guys did a really good job in Hawaii. And then Robin has the line of like, how does he do that? Which I thought that's a nice little button to put on the book. You get the quick little like 3-panel shot of Batman, and actually the bottom panel is just the Cape looking at the two of them, looking in disbelief, but you kind of get that look from Alfred that's like, he's right over there. So I liked how this book ended, and it's kind of cool that I had forgotten that their Batman is still in his dark black costume at this point. So
Prodigal.
Yeah, Prodigal. So what'd you guys think of the conclusion of a little stinger of this with the appearance of Batman and seeing Grummett draw Batman one more time? Let's start with Terrence.
Yeah, I love it. I love that black costume. I do miss the purple cape also from Rebirth. I like a lot of the costumes. I'm easy to please.
Same here.
I like the ending of it. I like, you kind of, like I said, you kind of knew this was coming, but it was also done perfectly. I remember 1996 like it was only 25 years ago, or what was it? Was it 30 years?
26.
26.
Yeah, 26 years ago. And I remember just the excitement of getting the book and having it in the prestige format, and the art looking so awesome in those, with the better quality paper and the glossy finish, and just getting some more Grummett art and seeing the two, teen icons of DC at the time in a book together, and whatever you want to say about this, the goofiness of Metallo in his scuba gear, and then at the end being a missile, his size changing shape. Is he making metal out of thin air? Is the metal disappear? Is it become dense? I don't know what's going on. Alfred flying first class and all that. All of it, I excuse all of it just to watch Tim Drake sock Superboy right in the face. That was worth all of it. It's like back in Justice League when Batman punched Guy Gardner with one punch. It was like, oh, so sweet, so sweet.
Yeah, Jay.
Yeah, to your point, Rob, I like that Batman's only in it for a few panels. Superman's not in it at all, because it would have taken away from really the history that had been built up with both Robin and Superboy at this point, because Robin's, series is in issue 30 something at this point.
Yep.
And Superboy wasn't that far along, but still had plenty of solo adventures to prove that either one of them could stand on their own. So if at the end of the story, very last minute, out of nowhere, there comes, the big boys to save the day, it would completely just maybe not completely destroy everything, but it would definitely be a hit to both of the characters who had firmly established that they could be their own heroes by themselves and didn't necessarily need supervision or assistance from their superiors. So I definitely like that, they were able to team up alone. That's kind of a contradiction, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The team up came about organically through themselves, and they were able to, save the day themselves without any assistance or interference from any other heroes, really. Because, like Terrence said, they're not, 13-year-old Damian Wayne and 11-year-old John Kent. They're, older teenagers who, again, at this point had been headlining their own books for a while. So I really like that. I like the fact that, they were, even friendly, even when they were kind of at odds, because even when Robin was getting the Kryptonite ring, it wasn't just for the sake of punching Superboy. It was more to be able to save him from her control. Even if he needed to incapacitate him for a little bit, it would be for his own good and the good of others, because who knows what she would have him do if he wasn't stopped. So I definitely like that. I liked their interactions. I liked, the story was, like Terrence said, it was very boilerplate, very, let's just get two likable, popular heroes together and have them team up. But it served its purpose. It's not perfect, but it's entertaining. And really, that's all you need sometimes.
So I'll have to probably put this in as the editor's note because I can't find it at the moment. And I'm hurriedly, while you were talking, Jay, to try and find it. I was going through to say, hey, now that we're finished with this book, I could tell you what's coming up on future episodes. So going through Mike's Amazing World like I normally do, the next story is Robin 35, which is his part of Final Night, which I don't think really goes through a bunch of it. I'm going to gloss over that. But we'll do Robin 35, and we'll probably try and do 3 issues, maybe 35, 36.
Now, you want to talk about poster worthy. That cover of 35
yes,
with Spoiler kissing Tim Drake, that's like billboard worthy. Oh my gosh, I love that poster so freaking much. Or that cover
if
so much.
36 is the one I'm thinking of, that's a beautiful cover. Never mind, I'm thinking of a different issue.
Oh, okay. So as I was scrolling through, in chronological order, it would go 35, 36, and then I was like, oh, I wonder when Robin and Impulse have their issue. That's the next one. So sandwiched in between 35, 36 and 37 is Robin plus Impulse that Terrence and I did out of sequence for like, hey, we ought to do this, and was one of the most... It is the hardest edit of any podcast I have ever done, and I'm going to insert it here when I can find it. And that would be episode 78 that I'm referring to. And oddly enough, you're going to get ready to hear what I'm going to say, but kind of, sort of, this is so ironic, it is so weird. The same thing that happened on episode 78 kind of reared its ugly head in this episode as well. So if you've been listening to the episode up till this far, and we hope that you have, Terrence sounds a little odd and a little compressed in this. I'm not entirely sure what happened to his microphone again. Because last time it happened to mine and kind of happened to his too, that there's something wonky with his connection. So it's really funny and really, it must just be outside of Gotham City when we travel that wonky things seem to happen to Terrence and I, but that it happens to the Young Justice characters being Kid Flash and now Superboy. So episode 78, you'll hear what happens in that. And if you don't remember, go back and listen to that one, because it's there was some weird audio stuff going on in that episode as well. But okay, back to me. Episode 78 was the Impulse episode. Here we go. For whatever reason, my microphone did not record. It was only Terrence's mic.
Oh my gosh.
So rather than re-record, I think actually what happened that Terrence's computer, his computer mic was recording, not his headset. So we got his voice. So I had to bump up his audio. So I treated it like a radio play. Terrence kind of thankfully led that episode. So he was asking questions, and I just had to figure out, what did I say when I made Terrence laugh? Because then I had to remember the thing that I said that caused Terrence to laugh, or if he asked me a question, or if I asked him. I think I spent 2.5 to 3 days on that episode. I thought there is no way. And the episode, I thought, during our recording turned out so well. So go back and check out that episode. And I'm going to put an editor's note if I can find out what episode that is.
And I had to put a lot of faith in you, Rob, because you could have made me look really bad. Because you could have asked me, so Terrence, how many times have you read this issue? I'm like, about 5-6 times. And then you take that out and be like, so Terrence, how many times have you been hospitalized with herpes? Oh, about 5-6 times.
6 times.
And then the other thing that's funny about that issue is Ryan couldn't be a part of it. So he recorded something a little separate, and you put that in the front, and it's Ryan like, yeah, this is a good issue. I liked it. It was fun. It was a good, decent issue. And then for the next 2 hours, you and I rip it apart. I'm like talking about, there's no way Impulse could type that fast. He would melt the keys of the keyboard, and the processor can't. That's too many combinations in a short time, and all this stuff. And there's Ryan like, yeah, it's a good issue. I liked it. And, I think on the next, he's like, man, you guys made me look so bad. But that would be fun to revisit that. That would be fun.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of cool that they built in, pretty quickly getting the Young Justice team, the what would become Young Justice within just a few issues in a few months. That issue has a cover date of the Robin Impulse issue has a cover date of December 1996 with the on sale date of October 30th. So from the issue that we just did,
June 98 is the first Young Justice.
Yeah.
Young Justice, The Secret, June 98. So yeah, a lot of people must have liked it.
And then with the Superboy issue in Robin that we just did, that's November of 96. So the timeline for them realizing, hey, we've got 3 heroes that we can kind of build. You were saying earlier, like, this really doesn't set anything up. It really starts to move the pendulum to, like, hey, we're going to do this Young Justice thing within the matter of a few months. Actually, a couple years, they would be launching the series proper really well. So I think it worked out time-wise with taking the little bit of a break that we did, that this is the book that fits right in here. It's a nice kind of palate cleanser. We're away from the clench for now before it starts to rear its ugly head again for a third time later down the road. But we're getting really close, probably within a couple issues of when I took a little bit of sabbatical from reading comics. So we're about an issue or two away from I'm going to be reading some Tim Drake stories I've never, ever read before. Wow. So I'm really looking forward to getting to some of this territory. For
the record, the cover I was thinking of was Robin 46, not 36.
Okay.
It's Mike Waringo. It's just almost completely white, and Robin's kneeling over like a fallen body. And there's
that is such a good issue. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And talk about being tied to another story, Genesis. Yeah, but that single issue is really good. So, but I think this is where we're going to end the episode, folks. Now, I know it's been a couple months, and I know, Terrence, you've done some things on the YouTube side of it. Do you have anything to plug at the moment before we sign out of this thing?
No, other than I hope you guys enjoy The Batman in the theaters. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to see it because I planned romantic getaway for my wife and I the coming weekend, not even realizing it was the Batman weekend or anything. And she keeps asking me, she's like, the Batman's coming out this weekend. We haven't gone away together in I don't even know how many years. It was long before the pandemic, and then with having kids and being little, every vacation has been, to Disney with the kids or something. So it's been, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so since we've had the chance, just her and I, get away for the weekend. So it's been a long time coming.
Enjoy that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. But she's been, he keeps asking, like, it's the Batman, right? The Batman? And I'm like, it's all right. I'll see it. I'll see it later. I'll see it later at some point. I hope you guys enjoy the heck out of it.
Jay, what do you got going on, sir?
I've got, just my own Twitter handle at JAYWS, and then at Comic Pause. I more post stuff on Twitter rather than write stuff over there lately because it's my own blog, so I can write whenever I want to, and haven't really been inspired by much of anything / not been burnt out on writing. So I'll do that. I do frequently write on Batman News. And actually, the other day, Rob, you shared it.
I was just going to say, you did write a very, very cool piece. So, Jay, I'll have you talk about it. But if you're Tim Drake fans and you're kind of like, you just go ahead, Jay, set this thing up. Because it's a wonderful article if you haven't had a chance to read it.
Thank you. Just the other day in DC Solicitations, they released the solicits for May, I think it is. And the Batman Annual will see Batman Inc., like Batman Incorporated feature, which is cool because I like Batman Incorporated. But Ghostmaker and Clown Hunter are going to be the two leads, the head of Batman Inc., which I think is not great because I don't think that those are good characters to begin with, but also made immensely more frustrating because Tim Drake has had nothing to do for the past 11 years in DC Comics. And then two characters that have had middling success that were just introduced barely 2 years ago are now handpicked in continuity by Batman to lead a team. I think is, frankly, kind of almost insulting as a fan of Tim Drake. Yes. So I wrote a piece called "Tim Drake Should Lead Batman Inc., Not Ghostmaker," where I just kind of run down those points that Tim has not had any sort of direction, has not had any real presence in the Batman comics for a decade now, and instead of having a clear direction and defined purpose, they hand something to undeserving characters that he would be perfect for. So definitely read that. I normally don't write things that are that impassioned and pointed and even heated, but I just felt that was kind of a last straw kind of thing there. So check that out. But I also do action figure reviews. I review McFarlane figures over there and review comic book issues every now and then, do news articles. So I'm over there, and I was actually recently on the Comic Binge show.
Nice, that's a good show
on YouTube. Yeah, we talked about the Batman story Dark Knight, Dark City, which is kind of a supernatural, really weird, but it's about Riddler, some kind of supernatural mystery that's going on, and it's really weird, but it was a good conversation. Paul Herman and his friend Adam, I want to say his name was. Sorry if he's listening, but that was really fun. So yeah, I'm just out and about and around. So there you go.
And then you can find me on Twitter at DrummerRob10, and the other show that we'll have to get Terrence on, because we were briefly trying to put in Kiss and Batman and Robin all in kind of one show. I think Sherlock Ward, we did one on Batman and Robin Eternal podcast where we started talking about Kiss. I think one of the first songs we broke down was Nothing to Lose. So you can listen to the Kiss podcast that I do with Nick and Nico Caruso at Right Between the Eyes
awkward.
Podcast. Yeah, it was.
Sorry, that was awkward. If you know what that song is about, you and I tried to skirt it, and she just went right for, oh yeah, you know what this song? I was like, why that? Because the idea was that podcast, which I think we got to 4 or 5 episodes maybe, and then there was just no time. But we were going to review every Kiss song that ever came out in the order it came out. So it wasn't like we picked that song and the song just happened to be that one, and we were both like, yeah, oh man, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe we should have started with the Greatest Hits album, or started with some Wicked Lester stuff or something.
Yeah, that's probably what we should have done. But so Terrence could talk more freely. We'll have to get him on Right Between the Eyes, but you can follow us at that show if you like Kiss and rock and roll, and I can let it slip here that we have a segment that we call the opening act, and we're going to feature Def Leppard on our next 2 episodes we're going to record pretty soon. So we do more than just talk about Kiss. So on the behalf...
I'm going to throw one thing in.
Yep, good.
Speaking of classic hair metal rock, Def Leppard, did you see The Peacemaker on HBO Max?
I am a couple episodes away from the end, so I'm not sure what you're referring to, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just curious if you liked you saw a couple episodes of it, though, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, isn't the music great in it?
Oh, yeah, the music's great. It fits in with the character really well. I'm like, yep, I could totally hear that on his iPod.
Cool. Yeah,
I picked up a guitar and learned the riff for the do you want to taste it or whatever is that fun stuff.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, on the behalf of Terrence and Jay, this is Rob, and you've been listening to the BatmanUniverse.net. More importantly, you've been listening to Robin. Everyone Loves the Drake podcast. We will see you in a few weeks. Take care. Thanks for listening to Robin, Everyone Loves the Drake podcast. This has been brought to you by the BatmanUniverse.net. Tim Drake, Robin, and all Batman-related characters are under copyright of DC Comics. This podcast is solely for entertainment purposes, so no infringement is intended by this show. The show is not a good revenue stream. Actually, there's not a stream at all. All music and sound clips are under copyright by their respected copyright holders. So there should be no need to send the Penguins lawyers after us for ill-gotten gains because there are none. You can get a hold of the show a few different ways. We are on Twitter at ELTD Podcast. You can also email in at robineltdpodcast@yahoo.com. Our Facebook page can be found at www.facebook.com/everyonelovesthedrake. And as always, you can message directly over at the BatmanUniverse.net. So email, tweet, or message us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll read your comments or responses on the show. The show you're listening to can be found a few different ways through iTunes and Windows Media, also over at our host, TBU. Leave us a review on iTunes if you listen there. It'll help spread the word of the show. Make sure you head over to the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman and Robin. Thanks for listening to the show and hearing why everyone loves the Drake. We'll see you in a few weeks. Take care.